Billionaire Elon Musk, Twitter's largest shareholder, rejects the social media giant's offer on a spot on its board of directors. Musk was appointed to the board last week and shared ideas he had for a platform. However, Twitter announced yesterday that Musk will not be joining the board. Twitter's president says that he's open to input from the billionaire. And joining us now to discuss more is John Schweppe, Director of Policy and Government Affairs at the American Principles Project. John, welcome back.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Let's start now with Elon Musk and his decision to forego a spot on the board. What do you think about that?
Well, it's pretty significant because to be on the board, he would have had to be a passive investor. He would have been bound by a lot of rules, fiduciary responsibility to the company, all sorts of things. And now he's an activist investor. So, if we're talking about free speech online, him being kind of a pain in Twitter's side, we definitely don't want him on the board. And that is what's going to happen now.
And how do you see this playing out? Twitter has been accused of censoring views of conservatives. I've had several of my tweets censored, things like that. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I think it's really encouraging that Musk has been out there talking about how he's a free speech absolutist. He was actually called upon, he has these Starlink devices to provide internet service in Ukraine. He was actually called on to suppress Russian media. And while he was, he liked the idea, but he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm a free speech absolutist. So I think if he brings that to Twitter, if he gets a little bit more hostile, the words hostile takeover have been thrown around a little bit, we'll see what happens. But I will say this is a really important thing. Twitter is very influential with how news narratives are spun here in Washington, D.C. It affects our politics. So we really do need it to be a free speech zone. It's not that currently. So maybe Musk will bring that, hopefully.
And speaking of censorship, we know that the American Principles Project came under fire in 2020 for spreading alleged misinformation, about Biden supporting sex reassignment surgeries. Yet HHS recently said, well, they're in it.
Yeah, we see this across the board. American Principles Project was censored on a number of issues in 2020, not allowed to talk to voters. And turns out everything we said was true. We said so at the time, too. We knew we were correct at the time. But look, this is what they do. They like to say over and over that none of this stuff is happening and that we're lying if we bring attention to it. And then as soon as it changes to where everyone understands it, then they say, well, it's good that it's happening. And right now, the Biden administration is out there saying that we should be doing sex changes for kids. It's hard to believe we're saying that here in 2022, but we are. This is the mainstream position of the Democratic Party, that, and I think we have to oppose it.
Let's talk about another issue, Hunter Biden's laptop. We talked about this, and it's leading up to the 2020 election, political election, and presidential election. And yet, this past week or so, several media outlets have said that the laptop is real. Elaborate more on that for us.
Well, I think the details were there, and we knew it was real back in 2020, but there was a coordinated cover-up by the media, by big tech platforms. They wanted to make sure that this story didn't get to the voters ahead of the election. Remember that the election was determined by 44,000 votes in 3 states. That's how close it was. There's no question that if this story would have been widespread, the results would have been different. And so, here we are, the media is finally coming to terms with the fact that it's true, a little too late. And I think what we need to make sure we're doing is having alternative media, putting a check on big tech so they can't censor these types of stories, and make sure that the truth gets out there, because we can't have a democracy with free and fair elections unless we do. And frankly, what we had in 2020, it's hard to say that's what it was.
Any other things that you're following right now?
Well, I think we're looking at the women's sports issues. We're seeing more and more states passing this legislation. And I think the thing is, we need to see Republicans really understand that the sex change for kids issue, it's not something they want to talk about, but they have to. The Biden administration is out here front and center saying this is what they want to do. And we have an election coming up. We need to talk about it.
John, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
All right.